What if I told you this story was waiting just for you? Good evening, friends. I'm Mr. Narratory. If you're here, it means the day is done and the quiet has finally arrived. Tell me, what time is it where you are right now? And what's your favorite way to end the day? If these stories bring you peace, consider subscribing, liking, or sharing them with someone who needs a little calm. Now, let's begin. The walk that took a whole day. The morning began the way the best ones do, not with urgency, but with the kind of hush that suggests the world already knew you'd be waking gently. The sky hadn't quite made up its mind yet. It was that soft color between blue and silver, and the air tasted clean, like something had been freshly rinsed while you slept. I opened the door slowly, not to step out quickly, but to let the day invite me. My boots were already by the threshold, worn soft at the ankles, and the path ahead didn't ask for anything more. I took my first step onto the gravel lane, each stone a small hello beneath my feet, and felt the weight of the house behind me settle like a book gently closed. No need to rush. There would be time. The garden to my right shimmered with dew, each leaf catching the light in the way only early hours allow. Somewhere nearby, a bird called once, then paused, then again, like it was testing the quiet. The trees that lined the beginning of the trail stood tall and unbothered, their branches stretched in welcome, the scent of pine and moss already thick in the air. I adjusted the strap of my satchel and let my breath fall into rhythm with my step slow, even, unforced. This was the kind of walk that didn't begin at the beginning. It had already started, in the dream before waking, in the stillness before standing, and now it was unfolding with each footfall. The road curved slightly to the left, past a wooden fence whose paint had long since flaked away into comfort. Beyond it, tall grasses swayed like sleep made visible, and the first touch of sun spilled across their tops like warm tea over linen. I paused there not to catch my breath, but to feel it, to let the quiet catch up to me. The wind was just enough to notice, not enough to chill, carrying with it the soft scent of earth and distant firewood. I closed my eyes for a moment and let the breeze press gently against my skin, like a reminder that I was already part of the day. Are you here too? Wherever you are, you don't need to be any further along than you are right now. There's no one waiting at the end of this story. No task, no finish line. Just step after step, moment after moment, easing forward. I took another step, then another, and the gravel gave way to dirt packed soft, with roots weaving beneath the surface like threads through fabric. Overhead, the canopy thickened just enough to filter the sun into gold. The path narrowed gently, as if suggesting, not forcing, that I might want to slow down just a little more. So I did, and the day, patient and wide, made room for me. The trail wound softly to the right, where the trees thickened into a green hush, and the dirt beneath my feet took on a darker tone, cooled by the shade. The sunlight dappled through the branches in flickers, like someone gently shaking a golden tablecloth high above. There were sounds here, but none that demanded attention. A bird chirping once, and not again. A breeze tugging a single leaf loose. The creak of a distant limb as it stretched toward the light. I let it all move past me like passing thoughts acknowledged, but not clung to. The path narrowed further, as if it too had remembered the comfort of closeness. On either side, ferns unfurled slowly, thick and velvet-edged, and I reached out once to brush a frond with my fingertips. It bowed slightly beneath my touch, not disturbed, just acknowledged. The air smelled like old rain, clean and earthy, with that deep, green scent that only forests can hold on to for days. Somewhere beneath the surface, water trickled. I couldn't see it yet, but the sound was there, running just beneath the reach of full awareness. I kept walking. My steps had fallen into a rhythm now, slow and even, and it was enough just to feel them heal, toe, breath. My thoughts were quieter now, too, not absent, but softened. Nothing pressed, nothing pulled. There was a joy in that. I passed under a fallen branch, arched across the trail like a gentle gate, its bark peeled smooth by time and touch. Just ahead, the trees opened slightly, and the first glimpse of a stream curved into view, its water clear as glass and threaded with golden leaves. I stepped toward it, careful not to disturb the silence the water seemed to hold. At the edge, I knelt slowly, resting my palms on the cool stones, and let the tips of my fingers dip into the flow. The chill ran up my arms in a welcome shiver, a reminder that I was real and present and fully here. The current tugged gently at my fingers, not enough to move them, just enough to be felt. And in that moment, I exhaled fully, like I hadn't in a while. Not out of relief, just release. I stood again, letting the droplets fall from my hand, and looked up through the break in the canopy. The sky had settled into a soft blue-gray now, the kind of sky that promises nothing more than peace. Are you still here with me? Let your shoulders ease, even just a little. Let the back of your neck loosen. You don't need to hold anything right now. We're not hurrying anywhere. This path isn't measured in miles. It's measured in moments like this. I stepped across the stream, where flat stones made a quiet crossing, each one steady and sure beneath my weight. The forest welcomed me again on the other side, and the trail curved once more wider now, the light returning in gentle pieces. A squirrel darted up a nearby trunk, stopped halfway, and turned to look at me as though to say, "You're doing fine." I smiled without meaning to, and kept walking. The air warmed slightly. The trees opened wider. And ahead, something bright was waiting but not calling, just patiently waiting. And I kept walking toward it, without needing to know why. The path eased its way out of the forest, the same way a sigh slips from your chest without force, without fanfare, just a slow opening into something wider. The trees thinned, their branches giving way to the sky, and suddenly I was walking along the edge of a wide field brushed gold by the morning sun. The grass moved like water, long and loose, swaying in waves that seemed to ripple with my steps. It stretched far on either side, broken only by the occasional wildflower patch blues and soft purples, and the faded orange of late bloomers that hadn't given up just yet. The sky above was bigger here, a soft canvas of pale blue, with clouds that didn't move so much as drift content to let the world revolve slowly beneath them. I followed the path as it traced a gentle curve along the edge of the meadow, the ground firm beneath my boots. Each step a rhythm I no longer needed to think about. It's a good feeling that when walking becomes breathing, and breathing becomes enough. The breeze followed me out of the woods, cooler now, and it carried the scent of clover and old hay and something floral I couldn't quite name. I stopped once to kneel and brush my hand through the tall grass, watching the way the stems parted like a curtain and then leaned back into place as though nothing had disturbed them. Bees hummed somewhere nearby, slow and low, and a bird circled high overhead, wings outstretched, moving with the kind of ease only sky allows. My mind had stopped trying to narrate everything. It had given up its usual need to organize, explain, remember. Thoughts came slower now, and fewer of them. Just a warm awareness of movement, of color, of presence. I adjusted the strap of my satchel again, not because it needed fixing, but because the simple motion of it reminded me I was here, still walking, still part of the world around me. The field sloped slightly uphill, and with each gentle rise, the view widened. In the distance, I could see the faint outline of hills farther on, soft shapes waiting with the patience of old stone. Somewhere, a dog barked not urgent, not near just a sound in the air that made everything feel even more lived in. I passed a wooden gate that stood alone at the field's edge, its latch broken, no fence to connect it, and I ran my fingers across the top as I passed, just to feel the sun-warmed grain beneath my skin. It didn't matter why it was there. It was beautiful just for being here. Are you still walking with me? Even in your mind, even in your breath? Let your thoughts stretch out beside you. Let your jaw loosen. Let your eyes soften their focus, as if looking far into something that doesn't need to be named. We are still early in the day, still quiet in the unfolding. There is no destination, just this path, this light, this breeze brushing your sleeve. And so I kept going, into the open space, toward whatever the day had, waiting not because I needed more, but because this was already enough. The path dipped gently again, folding into the low curve of the field before rising toward a stand of old tree stall and wide, their trunks shaped by decades of wind and the quiet weight of time. I could feel the change in the air, even before I reached them. The sun softened as if out of respect, and the breeze cooled as though it had taken off its shoes. A wooden bench appeared just ahead, simple and worn, tucked into the crook of two leaning trunks. It looked like no one had placed it there. It had simply grown out of the earth where it was needed. I paused, not from fatigue, but from invitation. The kind of pause you make when the day itself asks you to sit, and so I did. The bench creaked slightly under my weight, not in protest, but in greeting, like an old friend shifting to make space. The view from that small seat stretched out across the golden field I'd just walked, now framed by branches that swayed just enough to remind me the world was still moving. I took a slow breath and let it all in the rustle of grass, the distant call of a bird I couldn't see, the warmth of sunlight diffused through leaves. And for a long while, I didn't move. I didn't need to. My satchel rested beside me, its strap uncurled like a sleeping cat. My hands found each other in my lap. My eyes followed the flicker of light and shadow along the dirt path ahead. In the distance, bees moved from bloom to bloom, doing their small work without rush or hesitation. There was something sacred in the slowness, something honest in the quiet. I reached down and brushed my fingers across the bench's arm, feeling the grooves and weathered texture reminders that this place had welcomed many before me. Travelers, wanderers, maybe even people who had nowhere else to be and stayed longer than they meant to. The trees above me leaned inward just enough to offer shade but not enclosure. It felt like sitting inside a thought you didn't need to explain. And in that thought, I noticed how still I had become. Not just in my body, but in my mind. The kind of stillness that doesn't feel empty, it feels generous. Like space has opened up inside you for peace to walk around barefoot. Are you still resting here with me? Are your shoulders just a little lower? Your breath just a little easier? Good. That's enough. You don't have to earn this quiet. You only have to let it stay a while. I closed my eyes and let time pass without measuring it. There was no need. The day would carry me. The sky would wait, and the path ahead, winding out of sight beyond the shade, would be there when I stood again. I stayed for as long as the moment lasted, no longer, no less. And when I rose, my steps felt softer. The sun touched the edge of the trees again, and I stepped forward not out of urgency, but because stillness had refilled me. The trail continued, and I was ready to follow. Not long after leaving the bench behind, I heard the sound of moving water low and steady, threading its voice through the rustle of grass and the hush of leaves. The trail had grown narrower again, curving gently between stones that peaked up like old teeth, smoothed flat by years of footsteps and weather. As I walked, I began to see the stream winding alongside me, slipping over mossy rocks and between sunlit banks, clear and patient in its course. It wasn't deep, not enough to trouble a crossing, but it had the confidence of something that had always been there. The sun hit the surface at an angle that turned each ripple into silver, and for a moment I walked in sync with me on the trail, the stream beside me, two quiet things moving in the same direction without hurry. I stopped where a stone wall crossed the path, low and wide and covered in ivy so thick it looked like the stones had been folded into a green blanket. Someone had stacked them long ago, surely with care, and now time had taken over, softening the edges, knitting everything together in green and stillness. I rested a hand on the ivy, its leaves cool and waxy under my fingers, and let myself pause again, not to think, but to notice. Tiny insects danced above the stream in sunlit specks, flickering like sparks, and a single dragonfly hovered just above the water, holding perfectly still before darting forward in one smooth, deliberate motion. There's a kind of beauty in that sort of stillness, the kind that isn't doing nothing, but simply waiting for the right moment. I leaned against the stone wall and closed my eyes for a breath, or maybe two, letting the world continue around me, letting the sound of the stream wash softly through my thoughts. Are you still with me? Are your hands resting now? Maybe your shoulders have let go, just a little more. If they haven't, that's all right too. You don't need to fix anything here. Just breathe. Let the stream carry what you're ready to set down. When I opened my eyes, the wind had shifted. It moved through the trees like a soft idea, brushing my sleeve, stirring the ivy leaves so gently they barely rustled. The light had changed again to warmer now, rounder, as though the sun had found its place for the afternoon. I stepped up onto the stones and crossed slowly, the sound of water slipping beneath me in a quiet, grateful rhythm. On the far side, the trail opened again, this time through a stretch of tall meadow dotted with wild fennel and the faint purple of thistle blooms. The path was less marked here, just a suggestion worn into the grass, and I followed it with ease, like following a thought you don't need to control. With each step, the world grew quieter, not emptier, but more complete, like everything was exactly as it was supposed to be, and me, I was simply part of it, moving slowly, breathing steadily, walking on. The meadow eventually gave way to a grove of slender trees, their trunks pale and smooth like driftwood left standing. They gathered close together, not in crowding, but in kinship peach tree standing with a certain grace, the space between them full of filtered light and cool air. I stepped into the grove and immediately felt the temperature shift. The sun here was broken into soft patches, dappled and gentle, and the earth was layered with years of fallen leaves, pressed thin and fragrant beneath my boots. Every step was hushed, every sound softened. Even the bird song here felt slower, like it had been wrapped in cotton before reaching my ears. The trail narrowed again, weaving through the trees without urgency, just a gentle invitation to keep moving forward. The bark of the trees flaked in long, curling pieces, and in some places you could see where deer had rubbed their antlers markings left, not to disturb the grove, but to become part of its long memory. The breeze wound quietly between trunks, whispering a language only the branches seemed to understand. And still, the stream followed me, now off to the side, its voice quieter, as if it too had softened to match the stillness of the woods. I paused near one of the trees and leaned my hand against it. The bark was smooth and cool, the kind of surface that made you want to stay connected a little longer than necessary. I didn't rush away. I stood there with it, breathing slowly, letting my thoughts wander like light drifting through leaves. Are you breathing more softly now? Let the stillness in. You've earned it. You don't need to be anywhere else. Not yet. Maybe not for a while. The grove welcomed silence, but it wasn't empty. I could hear the quiet click of insects, the far-off flap of a bird lifting into the air, the deep hush of leaves adjusting above me. I felt a kind of release in that knowing I didn't need to speak, or do, or decide. Just to be here was enough, and maybe that's all this walk had ever asked of me. I stepped forward again, letting the trees part around me like curtains opening slowly. One branch curved low above the trail, and I ducked gently beneath it, my fingertips brushing the leaves as I passed. The path sloped downward now, just slightly, guiding me toward another clearing ahead where the light thickened, golden and full. It was the kind of light that makes the world look softer than it is, like everything's been painted in a warm glaze. The scent changed tulip green now, more earthy, like dry leaves and worn wood, and the sun baked into bark. A wooden post stood at the edge of the clearing, weathered smooth, with no sign nailed to it anymore. Just the outline where something once had been. I traced it with my eyes and then my hand, and thought how even things long gone can leave their shape behind. I stepped into the clearing, and the sun welcomed me back. The grove behind me whispered a goodbye that sounded more like, "You're always welcome here." And I believed it. As I left the grove and stepped fully into the clearing, the warmth wrapped itself around me like a favorite sweater pulled from the line sun, softened, familiar, and quietly perfect. The path became looser here, the earth drier, coated in a thin layer of dust that rose in little clouds around my steps. Bees hummed lazily through wild thyme that grew in patches along the trail, their movement slow and deliberate, drunk on sun and nectar. And then, without warning, the breeze shifted, and with it came a scent so real and sudden it almost stopped me in my tracks. Bread. Warm, crusted bread, with that distinct edge of rosemary or sazzure, maybe both. The kind of smell that settles right behind your eyes and reminds you of kitchens you once stood in, of hands that worked dough before dawn, of long tables set with quiet care. It wasn't overpowering, just enough to stir something inside me. I didn't look for the source. It didn't matter. The scent alone was a kind of company, a reminder that someone else was out there, living gently, tending to small good things. The trail curved toward a small stone wall, its top lined with lichen and delicate moss, and I followed it by instinct. Beyond it, tucked under the shoulder of a hill, sat a tiny cottage whitewashed, roof thick with moss. A chimney that leaned slightly to the left as if in mid-thought. No smoke rose from it now, and I saw no one in the windows. But the door was painted the color of spring grass, and beside it hung a bundle of drying herbs, swaying faintly in the breeze. I didn't need to knock. I wasn't looking for shelter. Only the comfort of knowing it existed. That someone here had planted lavender in the front bed and lined the windowsill with smooth river stones. That a place like this could sit quietly in the sun and simply be. I paused at the edge of the wall, letting my hand rest on the warm stone, and breathed deeply again. The smell of the bread lingered just faintly now, mingled with wildflowers and something sweet, maybe honey or memory. Are you still walking with me? Let yourself notice what your breath is doing. Let it be soft, slow, unmeasured. No one here is asking for more. Just this is enough. Just you as you are. I stepped back from the wall and continued along the trail, the cottage falling gently behind me, a small echo of welcome in its shape. Ahead, the land began to lift again, not steeply, but with that steady rise that promises a view if you're willing to climb slowly. I didn't rush. The sun warmed my back, and a low stone ledge appeared beside the path, perfect for sitting should I need it. But I didn't yet. My legs felt sure beneath me, and the rhythm of walking had become its own kind of comfort, as though my body and the day had fallen into sync. Far off, I heard the distant lowing of a cow, the clink of a bell, the easy stretch of country life unfolding at its own pace. Nothing rushed, nothing loud, everything simple, honest, whole, and I walked on, smiling now, thinking not of where I was going, but of how good it felt to go at all. The hill rose gradually beneath my feet, the trail climbing in gentle switchbacks that gave me space to breathe with each step. Grasses thinned here, replaced by low-growing shrubs and soft, chalky earth that cracked underfoot in quiet patterns. A breeze found its way to me more easily now, brushing the back of my neck and tugging faintly at the hem of my shirt. I paused once, not out of weariness, but to look behind me. The clearing, the cottage, the meadow wall of it, stretched below like a patchwork quilt folded from memory. I could see the pale sliver of the stream threading silver through the trees. And the grove where I'd rested now stood like a green hush in the distance. The sky had shifted again, a deeper blue now, wide and open with high clouds stretched like pulled cotton, slow and distant. I turned back and continued up, slower now, each step deliberate, as though the trail had asked me to tread with more attention. And then, almost without warning, the summit came. Not dramatic, not loud, just the quiet unfolding of space. A round, flat crown of earth opened up before me, ringed by low stone markers and crowned by a single wide tree. Its trunk was thick and knotted, branches spread in every direction, and the bark was a soft gray, weathered to the texture of held hands. I crossed the final few steps and placed my palm against it, cool, patient, unmoving. A breath left me then, longer than I meant to, not out of effort, just release. I circled around and sat at its base, leaning back against the trunk until my spine aligned with the solid weight of it. The view was everything. Fields rolled out in every direction, some golden, some green, some a deep brown where the earth had been turned. In the far distance, I could see the suggestion of rooftops, a line of trees, maybe a road. But here, it was only wind and space, and the steady rhythm of my own body growing quieter. Are you still with me? Lean back a little if you can. Let the earth carry your weight. You don't need to be the one holding it all today. Not here, not now. My hands rested on my knees, fingers loose, no need for action. The tree behind me made a low creaking sound, almost like breath, and its leaves shimmered in small patterns above my head. Shadows moved across my legs like the hour itself was passing without a need for clocks. I stayed there for a long while in no book, no task, no thought that needed finishing. Just the breeze in my ears, the shade on my skin, the world around me asking for nothing. And it was enough, more than enough. Eventually, I shifted, not from discomfort, but from readiness. I stood slowly, brushing dust from the backs of my legs, and reached out to the tree one more time, giving it a quiet thank you. It didn't answer, but it didn't need to. The trail bent again on the other side of the hill, curving into a stretch of woods where the light already looked softer. I took a deep breath, long and easy, and stepped forward, the leaves whispering a welcome before I'd even arrived. The trail wound gently down from the hilltop, its curves softened by fallen leaves that had begun to gather in quiet drifts along the edges. The air had changed, again cooler now, with a faint scent of cedar and something damp, like stones that had just remembered the rain. I followed the bend of the path into a cluster of taller trees, their canopies woven tight enough to filter the afternoon light into dim, shifting gold. The deeper I walked, the more the world narrowed, not in closeness, but in focus. My senses sharpened gently, like a pencil turned in slow spirals. I could hear each twig crack beneath my feet, feel the slight shift of light on my skin as branches swayed above. The stream I'd heard earlier returned to me now, not as a whisper this time, but as a voice with weight and movement. The rush of it grew with each step, until the path opened just enough to show it flowing wide and full, threading through the woods like a silver ribbon, edged with moss-covered rocks and half-submerged roots. And there, arched across its middle, stood a wooden bridge. It wasn't new. The planks were aged to the color of steep tea, and the railings were smooth with time, rounded by countless hands. But it stood steady, its frame tucked into the earth like it had grown there. I stepped onto it slowly, letting my boots find each board without sound. The wood creaked beneath me just once, like a deep breath, but it held firm. In the middle, I stopped and placed both hands on the railing. The water below rushed steady and clear, its current carrying leaves and small twigs in easy swirls. A dragonfly darted past, its wings catching the sun in flickers of iridescent green. I leaned forward slightly, watching the water for a long while. There's something about a stream that clears more than just your throat. It stirs things loose. It carries what you no longer need without asking for thanks. Are you still with me? Let this moment hold you. Let the sound of water do its quiet work. There's no weight you have to carry alone, not right now, not here. I closed my eyes for a few breaths, letting the air wrap gently around me. And when I opened them, the light had shifted lower, softer, as though the day itself had stepped closer. On the far side of the bridge, the trail disappeared again into the woods, dimmer now, lined with tall ferns and narrow tree trunks. I crossed the last few planks, my steps slower than before, not because I was tired, but because everything in me had matched the tempo of the forest, the hush, the steadiness, the deep knowing that time here was not the same as elsewhere. A squirrel darted along a branch just overhead, pausing to flick its tail and watch me pass. I gave it a nod, and it blinked once before vanishing deeper into the trees. Ahead, the trail began to slope again, but just slightly. The scent of the woods grew richer damp soil, decaying leaves, the crisp smell of bark cooling in shade. And something else, too. Something faint and warm, like wood smoke or memory. I followed it, without needing to name it. The trees made space for me again, and the day continued to fold itself around my steps. The trail narrowed once more, bending inward as though the woods themselves were leaning closer, guiding me with soft shadows and still air. The scent of wood smoke grew steadier, now still faint, but persistent, like it had settled into the bark of trees and the moss beneath my feet. I let the forest guide me, not by direction, but by feeling, as if each footfall was answered by the ground. Then, through a break in the trees, I saw it, a cabin, tucked into the curve of the hill, just off the path. It looked as though it had grown there, its stone foundation part of the slope itself, its wooden walls aged to a warm gray. The roof sagged slightly in the middle, and moss covered most of its shingles, but it stood steady, quiet, and whole. The windows caught the light in a way that didn't reflect, but welcomed. And even though no smoke rose from the chimney now, I could almost hear the slow creak of a chair inside, the thump of boots beside a fire. I stepped closer, drawn not by curiosity, but comfort. A wooden bench sat beneath the front window, carved smooth with time and use. I sat without hesitation, letting my body sink into the familiar weight of it, the wood warm from the sun. My pack slid from my shoulder and rested beside me, and for a long while I didn't move. There was nothing to do and nothing asking to be done. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of the sound of birds settling in the trees, the low rustle of leaves stirred by wind, the faint creak of the cabin's boards as it settled gently in place. I leaned my head back against the wall and closed my eyes, letting everything fade into quiet. Are you here with me still? Let your breath come easy. There's no story you have to hold right now. No thought you have to finish. You're allowed to rest, even if just for a moment. I opened my eyes again and looked out at the trees. Light filtered through them now in slants, soft amber and gold, touching the tops of the ferns like a painter's brush. A fox stepped delicately across the path, its coat sleek, its ears alert, but not afraid. It paused, looked at me for a heartbeat, then vanished again into the green. A moment shared, brief but whole. I stood, finally, and ran my hand along the frame of the cabin doorknob, to enter, but to say thank you for existing, for waiting, for being a place the world hadn't rushed. As I returned to the path, my body felt quieter than before. Not slower, just more at ease, like every muscle had remembered how to exhale. The trail beyond the cabin bent softly downhill again, and the air around me carried the scent of pine and damp stone. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows, painting the forest in soft layers of light. And I kept walking, the world shifting gently around me, every sound like a lullaby you almost remember. The walk wasn't over, not nearly, but I had found something here, a stillness that stayed, a kind of peace I didn't need to hold on to, because it was already walking with me. The path beyond the cabin curved gently downward, following the natural shape of the hillside as if it, too, knew the day was settling in. The light had shifted to that unmistakable tone between gold and gray, where the warmth of the sun lingers, but its edge has softened. Trees no longer cast crisp shadows, but wide, gentle impressions like memory stretched across the ground. The air was cooler now, touched with a faint hint of distant wood smoke that may have drifted from beyond the hills, or perhaps from the past itself. I walked slowly, not out of fatigue, but because the world around me had asked for it. Asked for stillness, for attention, for appreciation. The trail here was lined with wild mint, and each step released a fresh, peppery scent that mingled with the low hush of wind brushing the tops of tall grass. I noticed a lantern hanging from a branch ahead, small, metal, with a clouded glass shade, and though it held no flame now, it looked as though it had once for someone. A soft reminder that this path had been walked before and might be walked again. I paused beside it, letting my fingers brush the metal, which was surprisingly warm from the day. And in that moment, I let my shoulders relax, let my breath find its own rhythm again. Are you still walking with me? Just let your chest rise and fall, softly, naturally. You don't have to do anything more than that. You've done enough for today. I looked up, past the lantern, and saw the tops of the trees beginning to take on that gentle blue tint that signals evening's first real arrival. Birds called, less now less frequent, less urgentas, if they too were winding down. I heard a soft rustling in the underbrush, probably a rabbit or a hedgehog tucking in for the night, and the rustle made no attempt to hurry. Everything moved with purpose, but without rush. The path ahead curved around a small outcrop of rock, and I followed it, letting my fingers skim the stone, its surface textured with lichen and the warmth of the fading day. Beyond that curve, the trees grew a little taller again, their branches higher, their leaves darker in the growing shade. The undergrowth thinned, revealing stretches of soft moss where light pooled like velvet. I paused again to kneel and run my fingers over it, It felt cool and forgiving, like it would remember you even if you forgot yourself. The hush here was deeper, but not heavy. It was the kind of quiet that listens back. I stood and looked toward the deepening woods, where the trail continued, more faint now, but still present. And I knew I would follow it, not because I needed to reach anything, but because each step invited me to be more myself, more still, more aware. A cricket began its evening song somewhere close, and another answered farther off, and their rhythm stitched itself into the silence like tiny beads on a long thread. I took a breath, full and slow, and stepped forward again, letting the day slip further behind meant no loss, just lovingly set down. The evening ahead was waiting, and I was ready for it. The trail opened slowly into a clearing that had no edges, only soft curves of land falling away into the trees, like a thought you almost remember. The light had faded into lavender and smoke. The last bits of sunlight brushed across the tops of tall grasses in long, low streaks that looked painted on. I stood at the edge of that clearing for a while, letting the quiet soak in not just around me, but through me. The hush was full of sound, the low drone of insects warming their voices, the far-off hoot of an owl not quite ready to claim the night, the brittle snap of a twig somewhere unseen. Fireflies blinked lazily near the ground, not in clusters, but in pairs, as if they were walking together too. Their glow wasn't sharp, but soft, yellow like candlelight, pulsing with the rhythm of an old lullaby. I walked to the center of the clearing, where a small ring of stones hinted that once someone had made a fire here. The ashes were long cold, but I could imagine the warmth of them, the soft crackle and flicker, the slow curl of smoke into stars. I didn't light a fire now. I didn't need to. The warmth of the day still held in the earth beneath me, and the stillness of the place was more than enough to keep the night at bay. I sat down on a flat rock just outside the old ring and leaned back on my hands, tilting my head to the sky. It had deepened into a wide, soft blue in neither day nor night, just the in-between, a time that asked for nothing but presence. And so I gave it. I watched as the first few stars began to show themselves one by one, like shy children stepping into the doorway of a quiet room. Are you watching too? Let your eyes soften. Let your breath settle low in your belly. You don't have to hold up the sky tonight. It's here to hold you. A breeze moved across the clearing, light and thoughtful, rustling the grass just enough to make it sound like someone was telling a story nearby. I listened, though I couldn't hear the words, only the tone, only the promise of something kind. I stretched my legs out and let my body sink deeper into its own weight, the day finally uncoiling from my spine, from my shoulders, from the space behind my ribs. Everything that had once seemed urgent had grown quiet now, not forgotten, just resting. I stayed there until the fireflies blinked more steadily and the shadows grew thick enough that even the trees looked like they were sleeping. Then I stood, slowly, gently, as if not to wake the clearing itself. I brushed my hands off and adjusted my satchel, the strap settling back across my chest like a familiar touch. The trail continued from the far edge, a little less defined now, as if even it was growing sleepy. But I followed it without hesitation, not because I needed to reach anything, but because the night had made space for me. because walking was no longer about going it, was about being carried softly by the hush that lives only in moments like these. The path ahead curved gently into the hush of night, its shape now more felt than seen, like a dream you don't quite remember, but know how to follow. Each step was smaller now, quieter, the earth beneath my feet cool and soft, as though the ground itself had exhaled with the setting of the sun. Overhead, the sky had deepened into its full evening blue, a vast, soft quilt, scattered with stars that flickered like the thoughts of someone just drifting off. I walked with my head tilted back, watching them come to life, one by one, no, all at once, but slowly, as if the night was letting them in on a secret. The moon hadn't yet risen, but the starlight was enough, catching the silver edges of dew forming along the edges of leaves and low stones. It was then that I noticed how the stones on the path simple, weathered, round from years of footfalls and rain, had begun to reflect the sky above them, not brightly, not boldly, just a soft shimmer, like they were remembering the sun, or maybe answering the stars. I followed their quiet gleam, not needing more than that to guide me. The forest around me had grown still in a different way, now no longer the hush of afternoon, but the deep calm of something sleeping. Trees no longer whispered, they simply stood. Their branches barely moved, their shadows stretched long and steady across the forest floor. Even the animals had quieted, save for the rhythmic chirp of crickets and the occasional distant call of a night bird. The air smelled darker, too cool bark, wet leaves, the first trace of wood smoke from somewhere I couldn't see. It wrapped around me like a cloak, and I let it settle on my shoulders. Are you still walking with me? Or maybe, like me, you're floating a little now, your thoughts lighter than they were, your breath deeper than before? That's good. That's what this walk is for. I paused once to kneel beside a large stone half buried at the edge of the trail. Its surface was mottled with lichen, cool to the touch, and when I laid my palm flat against it, I could feel the temperature of the earth beneath it steady, patient, as if it had never once forgotten how to be still. I lingered there, my other hand resting gently in my lap, not holding anything, just resting. And then I stood again and moved forward, slower now, but not from tiredness, from reverence, from the weightless feeling that comes when the world gets quiet enough for you to hear your own heartbeat, not as noise, but as part of the rhythm around you. A clearing appeared up ahead, not like the one before, but smaller, edged in wildflowers that only opened at night. Their petals were pale, soft lilac and cream, some nearly translucent in the starlight. I walked through them carefully, not to disturb. They seemed to nod as I passed, as if they'd been waiting. At the far edge of that clearing, I saw the faint rise of another hill, not steep, but just enough to suggest a view. And I knew I would climb it, not for the height, but for the pause, for the sky, for whatever waited at the top that needed no explanation, just my being there. The hill rose ahead of me, soft and rounded, not a challenge to climb, but a suggestion, like someone had quietly left a blanket unfolded just for you. The path grew faint, not from neglect, but from the way so few things had pressed themselves here. My steps were light, careful not to stir the wildflowers that clustered along the slope, pale in the moonlight and leaning gently with the breeze. The air had grown still again, not heavy, but calm. In that particular way, night sometimes offers like it's holding its breath to let you be the only movement in the world. As I climbed, the sky expanded above me, filling more of my vision with every step. The stars no longer peeked through branches. Now they opened fully above, a canopy of soft silver points that shimmered without need for attention, and the moon she had risen without fanfare, round and quiet, her light pooling across the hillside in wide, gentle strokes. It wasn't bright, it was soft, a kind of light you didn't look at, but lived inside. At the top of the hill, the grass was shorter, woven low and thick like something braided by wind. I sat carefully, legs folded, and leaned back on my palms, letting my spine find the slow curve of the earth. For a while, I didn't move, didn't think, didn't need to. The quiet here was complete, not in silence, but in wholeness. You know that kind of stillness, don't you? The one that doesn't ask you to do anything but stay, to be. Are you with me now? Let your jaw loosen. Let your breath stretch out wide. There's no effort here. You're safe in this quiet. Let it hold you a little longer. I lay back in the grass, arms spread loosely, feeling each blade press gently into my back. The warmth of the hill had held through the evening, and now it offered itself to me without question. The moon hung above, a slow pulse in the sky, steady and old and kind. Around me, the world exhaled. A bird rustled somewhere behind me, settling further into its nest. A moth brushed past my cheek, drawn towards something only it could see. And high above, clouds like silk threads barely moved, stretching so thin they seemed woven into the stars themselves. I closed my eyes not from sleepiness, but from fullness. The kind of fullness that comes from having taken only what was offered. The kind of rest that doesn't come from stopping, but from being so completely where you are that there's nowhere else to go. I stayed that way for what might have been minutes, might have been more. Time had softened to a hum, and I let it carry me. Eventually, I sat up again, slowly the grass parting gently beneath me. The trail continued just beyond the crest, winding downward into the next valley, where the tops of trees glowed faintly under the moon. I stood, brushed off my palms, and looked back on Snow to say goodbye. But to mark the feeling, that hush, that stillness, that moment where everything aligned, then I stepped forward, into the silver path ahead, and let the night lead me. The trail sloped gently downward from the hilltop, winding through tall grasses that swayed in slow motion under the moon's light. Each step I took softened into the hush of night. The earth below my boots, padded by dew-kissed moss and dry needles, dropped long ago. The sound of the world had changed again, not silent, but deeper, more rounded. Even the wind had shifted its tone, and there, beneath its edge, I caught the faintest hint of something familiar. The smell of rain, not present yet, but nearby. That unmistakable trace of wet earth, distant thunder, and cool air riding ahead of a front. It brought with it not urgency, but permission to slow even more, to feel the pulse of the land preparing to drink. The path dipped between two long rows of trees, their trunks dark and straight, as if someone had drawn them with ink. Overhead, their branches curved toward each other, forming a kind of canopy, not quite closing off the sky, but framing it like the border of an old, forgotten painting. I stepped beneath them, and the air changed. It cooled instantly, wrapping me in a sense of shelter that didn't need doors or walls, just trees, just stillness, just belonging. I walked slowly through the grove, letting my fingers brush the bark of a trunk as I passed, its surface rough and slightly damp with the night. The scent of pine deepened, mingling with wild mint and the first trace of petrichor, that word we use for the smell of rain before it falls. Somewhere above, an owl called out, low and calm. Not a warning, just a note passed into the air to say, "I'm here too." I nodded without thinking, and the path curved again, leading into a glade, not wide, not cleared, just a gentle open space where the underbrush thinned and the sky reappeared in full. I stood in the center of it and looked up. The moon had risen higher, her light spilling into the clearing like milk, soft and even. The stars clustered tighter now, and a thin, high cloud drifted slowly past, catching the moonlight like gauze. Are you breathing slowly? Can you feel how still the world has become? You don't need to answer. Just notice. Your body knows how to rest. Let it remember. I sat again, this time cross-legged in the grass, and ran my palms gently over the soft blades beneath me. Damp now, just slightly. The kind of damp that comes before the first drop, and in the distance, I heard it a single rumble, low, far. It didn't frighten me, it welcomed me. Rain was coming, but not fast, not hard, just enough to remind the forest it was loved. I leaned back against the base of a tree and tilted my head to the sky. One drop, then two, light as breath on my skin. The canopy above caught most of it, leaves tapping gently like fingers on a drum, but a few made it through, cool on my arms, on the backs of my hands, on my forehead. I didn't move. There was no reason to. Everything around me, every shadow, every root, every drop, was part of the same rhythm now. Not a storm, a lullaby. And I stayed still until the quiet patter became my heartbeat, and the night became my shelter, and all the world around me remembered how to be soft. The rain never truly arrived, it simply visited, lingered like a soft hum, and then faded, leaving behind the scent of everything awakened. The forest around me had changed again, but only slightly. The air was heavier now, rich with the perfume of damp leaves, fresh earth, and something almost sweet, like moss blooming in secret. I stood slowly from where I'd been resting, brushing a few drops from my shoulders, though most had never touched me, protected as I was beneath the high sweep of tree branches. The path continued just beyond the glade, narrower now, winding between tall trunks that looked darker in the wetness. The sound underfoot was no more squish than step, a quiet, patient rhythm, like walking on softened memory. The trees here leaned inward, but not in warning more, like they were listening. To me, perhaps. Or to the soft exhale of the land after that brief kiss of rain. I walked slowly, letting each breath fall into the rhythm of the trail. No need to hurry. Nothing ahead was waiting for me in the way of demands. It was simply there, unfolding with each step. The moon above continued her quiet watch, filtered now through a thin mist that caught the light like smoke. And then, somewhere ahead, I began to hear it. Not loud, not sharp. Just a suggestion at first, the sound of water, moving not with rush, but with intention. A steady stream. Its voice growing clearer the closer I came, as if it were speaking directly to my chest. When the path opened again, I saw it. A narrow ribbon of water cutting gently through the forest floor. Not wide, not deep, but perfect. Its banks were lined with small stones, each one catching the moonlight in scattered silver glints, as if the stars had dropped pieces of themselves there to rest. The water was impossibly clear, and I could see the smooth pebbles beneath its surface, shifting occasionally with the current's slow tug. I knelt beside it, letting my hand hover just above the water, then slowly dip in. It was cool but not cold, like a perfect cup of tea, left out just long enough to drink. I let it run between my fingers, felt it slide across my skin, and for a long time, that was enough. Just me. And the stream, and the steady, hushed breath of the forest. Are you still breathing slowly? Can you feel your shoulders softening again? Let them. Let this moment be the one that reminds your body it's safe now. You've done enough today. More than enough. I sat on a flat stone beside the stream and let my feet find their way to the water's edge. A firefly blinked near my knee. Then another, a little farther off. Their rhythm was different than before, slower now, like the whole world had tuned itself to rest. The stream gurgled softly beside me, carrying with it tiny twigs and leaves like forgotten thoughts being returned to the earth. The moonlight flickered on its ripples, dancing in small flashes that moved without pattern, without need to be understood. And in that quiet dance, I felt something stern at urgency, but belonging. Like I had always meant to arrive here, even if I hadn't known the path would lead to this place. I sat until the coolness crept up gently through the stone, not enough to send me away, but enough to nudge me to rise. The stream sang behind me as I stood again, and ahead the path bent once more upward this time, toward a hill where shadows gathered thick and low. I took one last look at the stream, nodded once, then followed the trail into the hush beyond. The trail ahead sloped upward again, not steeply, but with the kind of steady pull that draws your attention inward as much as forward. My footsteps slowed not because the climb was difficult, but because something about the air had changed. It wasn't the weight of rain this time. It was something older, something that hummed just beneath the sound of wind and trees. The earth here felt different, underfootless, like soil, more like stone wrapped in moss, firm but giving. As I ascended, I noticed the forest beginning to open again, not into a clearing, but into space. Trees grew farther apart, their branches higher, as if they were giving the hilltop room to breathe. I passed beneath one particularly tall pine, and as I stepped through its shadow, I heard a single, soft chime. It rang out above me, clear and high, almost too delicate to be real. It didn't repeat. It didn't need to. Just one note, suspended in the air, long enough to turn my eyes upward. There, hanging from a low branch of an old oak tree, was a wind chime made from bits of glass and thin pieces of metal. It swayed gently in the night breeze, and the moonlight turned each piece into a sliver of soft silver. I paused beneath it, letting the echo of its note linger inside me. It wasn't music in the way we usually mean it. It was more like breath, or memory, or the last word in a story whispered long ago. I placed my hand on the tree's trunk, feeling the low thrum of life still held there, even after the sun's warmth had faded. And then I looked ahead. The hilltop stretched out just a little farther, and at its highest point sat a low stone circle, worn down by time, lichen-covered, moss-laced, and quietly beautiful. I made my way there and stood in its center. The view opened wide on all sides, forest and field blending into soft blue shadow. The stars above now brilliant and full. The moon lit the stones faintly, and they returned the light with a shimmer that wasn't brightness, but presence. I sat inside the circle, cross-legged again, and felt the weight of the day settle into the earth beneath me. Not as burden, as offering. Everything I'd carried, with Mitha thoughts, the stillness, the small moments of wonder, had gathered here, not heavy, just whole. Are you still here with me? Let the night hold you now. Let your breath meet mine. There's no need to speak. Some parts of you understand this kind of quiet without words. A breeze passed gently over the hill, and the wind chime sounded again once, twice each note clear and fading. I closed my eyes and listened, and the sounds of the forest rose and fell in layers. Crickets whined through pine needles. The quiet hush of leaves that hadn't yet dropped their rain. The world was speaking in its oldest language now, and I didn't need to translate. I just needed to listen. I stayed there for a long while. The stones didn't mind. The night didn't rush me. And when I finally stood, my legs steady beneath me, I felt taller somehow. Not in body, but in spirit. The trail continued, just beyond the circle, dipping gently into another stretch of trees. And I knew I would follow it, still wrapped in that last note, still carrying the quiet like a shawl across my shoulders. The path that led down from the hill was soft and sure, as though the earth beneath it had been waiting for me to return this way. My steps felt quieter now, even more than before, like the night itself was walking beside me, matching my pace with its own slow breath. The trees around me were taller again, their trunks slender and pale, reflecting the moonlight like polished driftwood. There was no breeze now, only the faint hush of the forest settling deeper into stillness, and the occasional whisper of leaves brushing against one another far above. As I moved forward, a light began to appear in the distant Sino, bright, not blinking, just steady, a warm golden glow filtering through the trees like the first thought of morning. I didn't rush toward it. I simply let it grow step by step, the way comfort does when you realize it's allowed. The scent of the woods changed to genless pine, more cedar, and underneath it, something softer. Smoke, perhaps, and faint traces of bread, or something sweet, long since baked. And then, just past a curve in the trail, I saw it clearly. A cottage, small and quiet, nestled into the hillside as though it had always belonged there. Its walls were stone, its roof pitched and moss-lined, and in its single front window glowed that same steady light, soft and gold like honey held in glass. A lantern hung just beside the door, and a wooden chair sat empty on the porch, angled slightly as if someone had just stood and gone inside. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. The door was already open just. A little and inside, I could see a fire casting slow shadows across the walls and a kettle resting quietly near the edge of the hearth. I stepped inside without sound, and the warmth wrapped around me immediately not hot, not sudden, but whole, like stepping into a memory that had waited patiently for your return. The room smelled of rosemary and worn pages, of old wood, and something faintly floral, like dried lavender tucked into corners you couldn't see. A low table stood beside the fire, and on it, a single cup. Steam rose from it, slow and steady. I sat in the chair across from it, not to claim it, but to share in its presence. And for a long time, I didn't move, didn't speak, just breathe. Are you still here, in this moment with me? Let your breath soften now. Let your thoughts grow quiet. You're safe here. You've made it through the longest part of the day. The warmth of the fire reached me in waves, touching my arms, my legs, my chest, the back of my neck. It asked nothing of me. It offered only stillness. On a shelf, near the hearth, sat a row of books, each spine worn and familiar, even though I'd never read them. Their titles were faded, their pages loved. I stood once more, slowly, and ran my fingers along their covers, choosing one without thinking. I returned to the chair and opened it, and the pages smelled like dusk. I didn't read it aloud. I just let my eyes move across the lines, letting the rhythm of the story wash over me like water. Outside, the wind had returned just enough to rattle the smallest chime hanging under the eaves, a quiet song of homecoming. The fire popped softly beside me, and the night beyond the window deepened, and I stayed there, inside the hush, the warmth, and the knowing that I had walked far enough for now. The fire in the hearth burned low but steady, and I stayed a while longer, watching its soft flames lean and bow, as if they too were growing drowsy. The book rested on my lap now, half read, though I could not recall the last page I turned. It didn't matter. The story had blended into the room itself, into the golden light, the worn wood, a hush that wrapped the cottage like a second roof. I rose slowly, quietly, not to leave it behind, but to carry its stillness with me. The door opened with the faintest sigh, and I stepped back into the cool night. The wind was lighter now, gentler than before, and it brushed past my shoulders like a hand smoothing a blanket. The stars overhead had shifted just slightly, wheeling in their slow arc across the sky. Fewer now, brighter. The moon had begun to dip beyond the treetops, her silver light taking on the color of snow, pale and blue and tender. The path waited for me where I had left it, lined with dew-damp grass and tiny flowers that glowed faintly under the starlight. My footsteps made no sound as I followed it, and everything around me moved in time with my breath. The forest no longer felt like a place I was passing through it, felt like a part of me. Or maybe I had become a part of it. Each tree, each stone, each hush of branch above was familiar now, not known in the way of names or maps, but in the way of rhythm, of belonging. The path curved once more, then widened, leading into a small field where the grass grew long and soft, folding gently as I walked through. At the far end, I saw a low bench beneath an arching tree whose leaves shimmered in the breeze like tiny mirrors. I sat without thinking, without planning, just letting the bench receive me. The wood was smooth and cool, and I leaned back, tilting my head to the stars. They felt closer here, not high above, but just overhead, like I could stretch out my hand and find my fingers glowing. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called Doan's soft note, low and round, and then all was still again. Are your eyes beginning to close? Let them. There is nothing more you need to see right now. Nothing you must do. The world is still turning without you carrying it. You can rest. You are allowed to rest. I sat there, listening to the quiet, feeling the pulse of the earth slow down. Even my own thoughts had grown light, floating near the edge of dreams, no longer weighed down by shape or name. Ahead, I could see where the path disappeared into shadow once more, but I didn't need to follow it yet. There was time, plenty of time. I lay back in the grass, beside the bench now, and the blades cradled me like something alive. The tree above swayed just enough to whisper, and for a long, long moment, I simply breathed deep, easy, present, and I knew without words, without explanation, that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The grass beneath me had cooled, the kind of cool that comes with deep night, when even the stars begin to blink slower. I didn't move right away. The sky above no longer shimmered as brightly. It had softened into something quieter. The moon, now low on the horizon, had dipped beneath the trees and left only her afterglow of faint, silvery memory that lined the tops of leaves and the edges of the clouds that moved like breath. The owl had gone silent. Or perhaps I had stopped needing to listen for it. The field was still, wrapped in the final hush of night, the kind of stillness that doesn't wait for morning but simply holds the moment it's in. I sat up slowly, letting my fingers trail through the grass, each blade cool and damp and familiar. The bench beside me looked unchanged, but something about it felt like it had served its purpose. It had waited here for someone, and now it had done its part. The path ahead was faint, almost invisible in the dark, but I knew where it went. Or maybe it didn't go anywhere at all. Maybe it simply continued, because the walk never really ended. Not in the way we think it does. I stood, adjusted the strap of my satchel, and stepped forward, not with purpose, not with urgency, but with presence, with ease. The trail led me through a narrow stand of birch trees, their white trunks catching the last dust of starlight. Their leaves shimmered softly overhead, and as I passed beneath them, I imagined them bowing slightly, not in farewell, but in gratitude. The breeze had stilled entirely, and the night was filled with only the sound of my own breath, slow, even quiet. Ahead, just beyond the trees, I saw the faintest outline of a gate, wooden, low, unlatched. It wasn't a boundary, it was a gesture. I passed through it without opening anything. It welcomed me all the same. Beyond it, the landscape opened into a wide stretch of meadow that faded seamlessly into horizon. There was no house, no road, no lights, just the earth stretching on, the color of sleep, the shape of peace. I stood for a moment, looking out, and then I let myself sit one last time, knees drawn to my chest, arms folded gently around them. I looked up. The stars were thinner now. The sky was softening, taking on the first breath of morning, not color, not light, but possibility. The promise that soon the world would stir again, but not yet, not now. Now was for stillness, for quiet, for knowing that you had walked far and well and with care, that every step you took today belonged to you, that even if no one saw them, the earth did. And she remembered. Are you still here with me? Then take one last breath. In, full, deep, and let it go. You've done enough, more than enough. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not broken. You are exactly where you're meant to be. The night is holding you now. Rest easy. Sleep well. Thank you for walking with me. If this story brought you calm or helped you feel just a little more at home in your own breath, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. I read them all. And if you'd like to join me again, you're always welcome to like and subscribe. I'll be here when you're ready for the next quiet place. Until then, rest well. You've done enough for today.